He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. With a single stare, Tom Berenger could freeze a room. A clenched jaw, a haunted look, and the quiet certainty that this man has seen things, on screen and maybe even off. For a decade, he was Hollywood's go-to warrior. A soldier, a sniper, a leader, a man hardened by violence and shaped by honor, or the lack of it. And then, he was gone. Not gone like scandal, not gone like shame. Gone like a storm that passed and left you wondering if it was ever really there. He didn't become the next Harrison Ford. He didn't cash in on fame. He didn't play the game. But for one perfect stretch, from the late 70s through the 90s, Tom Berenger was the guy. The moral weight in an ensemble, the scowl in a foxhole, the quiet intensity holding the frame together. He was nominated for an Oscar, carried franchises, and then he slipped under the radar. So how does someone go from nearly playing Indiana Jones to Sniper 7 legacy? This is the story of Tom Berenger, one of the most quietly powerful actors of his generation. A career forged in sweat, scar tissue, and soul, one that never screamed for attention, but deserves to be remembered. The path Tom Berenger took through Hollywood wasn't smooth, but it was unforgettable. He was considered for Indiana Jones. He shared the screen with legends. He gave one of the most chilling performances of the 1980s. And then, he quietly slipped out of the spotlight into a world of straight-to-DVD sequels, made-for-TV thrillers, and long silences between roles. But here's the thing. He never stopped acting. He never stopped being good. Tom Berenger didn't disappear. We just stopped looking. Let's rewind and see what really happened, and why his career is still one of the most quietly impressive in modern film history. Thomas Michael Moore was born on May 31, 1949, in Chicago, Illinois. His father worked as a printer for the Chicago Sun-Times, and the family grew up in a traditional Irish Catholic household. It was a home where values like hard work, loyalty, and humility weren't taught. They were expected. These weren't lessons he had to learn later in life. They were baked into his DNA. After high school, he attended the University of Missouri, majoring in journalism, not theater. He didn't grow up with Broadway dreams. Acting came later. Initially, he worked as a copy editor, but the newsroom life didn't click. He knew there was something more visceral, more creative he was meant to pursue. So he took a leap, moved to New York, changed his name to Tom Berenger, and started again. In the early 70s, Berenger trained as an actor while picking up work in regional theater and soap operas. One Life to Live gave him his first regular gig, and it didn't take long for casting agents to take notice. He had that thing, a presence, a natural intensity that didn't require a monologue, just a glance. In 1977, he landed his first movie role in Looking for Mr. Goodbar. It wasn't a big part, but it was unforgettable. He played a seductive one-night stand who turns violent, opposite Diane Keaton. That moment, that chilling transformation, made a mark. Hollywood had found its next leading man, or so it seemed. By 1980, Berenger had worked with Christopher Walken in The Dogs of War. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it put him squarely in the center of Hollywood's attention. Directors saw something in him, a grounded masculine presence that could simmer or explode depending on the scene. In 1983, he was cast in The Big Chill, a now iconic ensemble drama about a group of old friends reunited after tragedy. Berenger played Sam Weber, a TV actor dealing with nostalgia, regret, and lost love. It was a quiet, soulful performance. He wasn't the flashiest character, but he added real emotional gravity. You could see it. The pain behind the charm, the disappointment behind the smile. But even with critical praise, Berenger wasn't an overnight A-lister. He was building, brick by brick, roll by roll. That building would come to a head in 1986. Berenger was originally cast to play Sergeant Elias in Oliver Stone's Platoon, the moral compass of the story. The good soldier, the soul of the film. But Stone made a last-minute decision. He gave that role to Willem Dafoe. And he asked Berenger to step into the role of Sergeant Barnes, a scarred, sadistic leader, consumed by the horrors of war and hardened into something unrecognizable. Berenger didn't just accept the challenge, he embodied it. Barnes isn't just a villain, he is the war. His face, half covered in a twisted scar, is unforgettable. His eyes, dead. He wasn't snarling. He didn't shout. He just existed like a storm cloud you knew was about to break. Berenger earned an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, and more importantly, he terrified audiences. This wasn't your average tough guy performance. It was morally bankrupt, physically intimidating, and utterly controlled. He didn't overplay Barnes. He underplayed him, letting the silence speak louder than words. It was one of the darkest, most powerful performances of the decade, and it changed how people saw Tom Berenger forever. Following Platoon, Berenger didn't slow down. In Shoot to Kill, 1988, he played an FBI agent in a cat-and-mouse thriller with Sidney Poitier. In Betrayed, also 88, he took on white supremacists in a political thriller that dared to go deeper. In Someone to Watch Over Me, 1987, directed by Ridley Scott, he showed off his romantic side, vulnerable, conflicted, and surprisingly tender. And then came the curveball, Major League in 1989. No one expected Tom Berenger to be funny, but as Jake Taylor, the washed-up catcher with a bad knee and one last shot at glory, he was both hilarious and heartfelt. Surrounded by comedic chaos, Charlie Sheen, Wesley Snipes, Bob Uecker, Berenger played it straight. And it worked. He was the emotional core of the film, the quiet center in a whirlwind of foul-mouthed sports comedy. Audiences loved it, and for the first time in a long time, Berenger looked relaxed, almost happy. He could do more than drama. He could do heart. He could do humor. In 1993, Sniper hit theaters and became an unexpected hit. It wasn't flashy, but it struck a chord. Berenger played Sonnet Thomas Beckett, a hardened Marine with nerves of steel and demons under the surface. It wasn't just a shoot-'em-up. The film explored the psychology of killing from a distance, and Berenger made you feel that weight. Not through speeches, but through presence. Audiences responded. The film became a VHS and cable favorite. It spawned a franchise. Berenger returned for 4 sequels, a rare level of commitment in an era when most actors ran from direct-to-video. In 1996, The Substitute brought him to a very different battlefield. A high school overrun by gang violence. Was it realistic? Not really. Was it entertaining? Absolutely. Berenger was electric, handing out justice, fists, and one-liners. The film became a cult classic, tapping into 90s anxieties and revenge fantasy energy. Critics rolled their eyes. Fans pressed rewind. As the 2000s rolled in, something changed. Action films got sleeker, younger, more CGI. The gritty, blue-collar masculinity that defined Tom Berenger started to feel like a relic. He didn't stop working, but the projects were smaller. TV movies, indie thrillers, films like Stiletto and Breaking Point, solid performances in forgettable packages. He returned to the Sniper series more than once, not for money, for loyalty, for fans, for continuity. Hollywood may have moved on, but Berenger never left. In 2010, Christopher Nolan cast Berenger in Inception. A surprise to everyone. He played Peter Browning, the trusted advisor to Cillian Murphy's character. It wasn't a major role, but it had weight. Nolan later said, "We wanted someone who brought instant familiarity and emotional history. Tom has that." And he was right. In a film filled with dream layers and sci-fi spectacle, Berenger grounded the story with quiet intensity. A throwback to an older kind of actor, the kind who doesn't need to act to be believable. In 2012, Berenger starred in the Hatfields and McCoys miniseries with Kevin Costner. As Uncle Jim Vance, he was terrifying and brilliant. That performance earned him a Primetime Emmy Award. Finally, some overdue recognition. He continued working. More Sniper sequels, more indie films, and the occasional TV appearance. Never flashy, always committed. He's been married 4 times, has 6 children, and spends his time between South Carolina and Utah. He's kept his private life mostly private, though in 2012 he was involved in a public legal dispute over property. He also started the Tom Berenger Acting Scholarship, supporting theater students and giving back to the craft that gave him everything. Tom Berenger will never be the loudest name in Hollywood's history books. But maybe that's fitting. He wasn't a star in the traditional sense. He was something rarer, a presence, a face you trusted, a voice you listened to, an actor who didn't try to be memorable, he just was. So next time you scroll past a Berenger film on your streaming service, press play, watch the performance, watch the work, because for a while there, he was one of the best we had. If you made it this far, thank you. If you're into lost legends, underappreciated actors, and deep cinematic dives, hit subscribe, tap like, and leave a comment. Who should we spotlight next? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.